Hey, what is up guys? So today I want to talk about the Cliffos versus Niklas because these are going to be two up-and-coming best decks in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! In my personal opinion. The OCG has basically shown us that the Cliffos are going to be a very strong deck, and you don't even need to play their biggest boss monster, the Killer, or it's now called in the TCG the Tower, which is actually, it's funny that that card is a rare card, but that's good for the players, I guess, that are building the deck, because I mean there's a lot of high rarity Cliff cards already. But we're going to talk about what deck is actually going to be better. Now, first off, I do want to mention that the Niklas are not legal for the TCG yet. At the time of making this video, it's just a sneak peek for the Cliffos. They just came out into the game. Now, it's kind of cool that we're getting two new, I guess, mechanics in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That are actually going to be seeing some play that normally don't see any play. At the moment, right now, no one is playing Pendulums, but the Cliffos are definitely going to be making people want to actually play Pendulum-based decks. Well, basically, it's only towards that certain archetype, but you can still definitely incorporate a lot of other, cards that revolve around the pendulum mechanic, whether it's the Odd Eyes or the Trampoline Cat, which is the Trampoline Lynx, I believe it's the name. But it's just incorporating a lot of the pendulum mechanics that we really haven't seen in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because pendulums, they lose to MST and they're a little bit conditional, but with the Cliffos Scout, which is the new name of the Cliffos tool, you're able to complete your pendulum scout much easier, and whatever card that you need, you can just search out for it. So it's definitely going to make the deck much more consistent, and it's going to make the pendulum archetype kind of shine, because it's basically showing players how powerful the deck can be. Now, the OCG, they don't even play the Killer, and they've been doing really well. A lot of players actually in the OCG have been teching one Killer in, because in the mirror match, it can actually just give up that blow-up potential, which means that if I summon this card, you basically have lost the game. Kind of like if you want to think of it as your opponent has made Quasar, you've lost the game. Now, not to say that once Killer comes out, Niklas can't do anything, and I'm going to be talking kind of more about Niklas versus Cliffos, because, I mean, obviously mirror match in both of them. It just depends on, what they're playing. Now, it obviously depends on your build. Now, I feel like with Cliffos, you gotta play a bunch of the Cliffos. You gotta play 3 tool, you gotta play 3 summoners, or you gotta play the Trampoline Cat. You can opt to play Odd Eyes if you want to. In the OCG, they've been winning with 3, they've been winning with 2, some opt to play none. They went for like a Night Beam and the MSTs. They just want to get off their plays as quickly as possible. Now, in the OCG, what's strange is they haven't been a fan of the Vanity's emptiness, like lockouts of the Spark Dragons and all that other good stuff. And obviously, I have to mention real quickly that Burning Abyss is not out in the OCG. If you guys are wondering, why hasn't the Burning Abyss been doing anything? They don't actually have any of the Burning Abyss cards. At the moment, this is a TCG exclusive. Now, with the Niklas, I feel like they are a very strong deck, and they have super consistency, meaning that it's very difficult for you to open up with a hand that's unplayable. Now, if most of the players in the TCG do not favor the builds that actually play Tower or Killer, I personally just liked it because once you summon it, you've won the game pretty much against most decks. Now, the Niklas do have a trick up their sleeve. They have the Niklas of Decisive Armor, which can actually change the way the game is. But the thing is, once Killer is out, it's very tough for any deck to really do anything, simply because it has a really good effect. Plus, it has the ability to just get rid of a card out of your opponent's hand or on the field. Like, either way, they're going to be, losing card advantage, and that definitely is something that we have to take into consideration. I mean, it's a random card, so you don't even know what the heck your opponent's going to get rid of. So it all depends on what they can potentially hit or what they want to get rid of. So that, obviously factors in. Sometimes that could be the difference between losing and winning a game, where there's a Spirit Reaper attacks and then take the right card to your hand. You're like, are you serious? That's the one card I needed and I was going to finish you off next turn. That just happens. That's part of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! But the Niklas, I feel like they can kind of have that blow-up potential much earlier on than Cliffos. Because of the fact that a lot of players are playing the Djinns. I mean, one Djinn, the one makes it so your opponent cannot special summon. It's just so strong in the game. Cliffos can't really function too well. Now, Cliffos, they can kind of combat that by equipping the card where it's like the card can't be destroyed by battle, or by, I believe it's just it can't be destroyed by battle if I remember correctly. Now, obviously that'll make your Cliffos stay on board, and the next turn maybe you contribute it. But the problem is, what if they banish? They can do a lot more other things, because, like I said, Niklas are so consistent. They're going to be able to pull out a Trishula, pull out, whatever card they need for the right situation. Now, with both the decks essentially lose to Vanity's Emptiness. I want to mention that as a heads up. Now, Cliffos, though, they can lose to MST and they can lose to Vanity's Emptiness. Sometimes you open up with an awkward hand, you only have that one tool. You need that tool search because your pendulum scale is just, you don't have the right numbers. And if that gets wrecked by MST or something like Shadow Games, Dump the Dragon, get rid of that, then you're looking at a deck that can lose to MST or any basic back row destruction, or that I always forget that card's name, but a trap card. Your opponent controls 2 spells and you control nothing. You can activate from your hand during either player's turn, which is actually kind of key. That they basically can lose to 2 things. They lose to MST and they can lose to the Vanity's Emptiness. Pretty much most decks, I would say, in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Can lose to Vanity's Emptiness, although Cliff Force you can equip and they can do a little bit more stuff. Nakloth, unfortunately, they can't do anything. You activate one of the Nakloth, like the rituals, and if your opponent stops it with like Vanity's, very few of the Nakloth decks will have a rebuttal play. Like, they don't have the option to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and summon this monster and it's going to be able to pop something. Because most of them are playing so many Nakloth because you want to make your deck as quickly as possible, and you can play Reinforcement of the Army because it is at 3 in the TCG. It all depends when we get Nakloth, if we get them also. That is something that we might have to take into consideration. I'm pretty sure we get up. I believe some players said they were going to be OCG exclusive, but I'm pretty sure, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see when we get them. Because I don't like to make assumptions as far as like if we'll get them, when we'll get them. Because where's Nebrdisk? I mean, how long has it been? Chronomaly's done really nothing in the TCG, and Nebrdisk isn't out, so it probably won't do anything. And where's the Gaga sister? We haven't got the Gaga support, so sometimes it just takes a while for these cards to come out. But the thing is, at the moment, I don't see players main decking like Breaker or anything like that. I mean, you can main deck MST. That's going to be probably relevant for both those decks. In the OCG, they've been doing Night Beams. And actually, when I made my build, I was doing Night Beams MSTs. I just want to get my Pendulum Scale successful and then just be like, okay, I'm going to go for, Killer, and then just not care about most of the stuff in most decks. I know Gishkis, they can do stuff, and there's a few decks that can do stuff. But as far as like the metagame in the TCG, the main decks right now are the Shaddolls, the Shaddol Burning Abyss, and the regular Shaddolls, and the Satellar Knights. Those are the, I would say, most relevant decks. And the Satellar Knights, they actually have, I would say, okay, well, it depends on what builds that they're playing. There's a lot of different builds. The Sham build, which has actually been, like, it's funny, as I was talking about how this burning Satellar Knight, it was really good. Not Burning Abyss, it was basically a burn version of the deck. And what it allowed you to do is just keep on pumping out Sham, and you just burn your opponent to death, because it didn't matter if they had Killer out, because you were just going to constantly just burn it for 1,000 points of damage, 1,000 points of damage. And if you want, you could even throw in, like, Dimension Wall, or like Magic Cylinders, and you can kind of troll your opponent, and it's actually kind of good. That deck has the ability just to win because of just burning your opponent. And the Cliff Force, they have to keep on paying life points too. At minimum, they're going to be playing like at least 3 times in most duels, minimum, before they even like get out an established board. Usually they get activated once, and then they might, next turn they'll complete their Pendulum Scale to search out the other one. They want to go for more of extensive plays, and I feel like that deck also has the potential to lose at Bottomless. Bottomlessing the Cliff Force, it's not looking too good for them. Or any Pendulum-based deck, if you can Bottomless at the right time, or even Torrential Tribute, and then being able to OTK them back. So, as far as the decks in the matchup goes, like if it was Cliff Force versus Nakloth, what deck do I think would be better in that aspect? I feel like Nakloth's, simply because it has that consistency edge that Cliff Force don't exactly have all the time. Because first turn, what's the best play that you can do if you don't play Killer? You're basically setting up to be able to pull off, more extensive plays. You can maybe go for an XYZ play if you really want to, but realistically that doesn't happen because, XYZ is not too great in Pendulum-based decks unless you're able to finish off that game or able to make something that can stun your opponent. Whereas Nakloth is very consistent to go for the first turn, get Djinn in the graveyard, or if you have it in your hand, just be like, okay, I'm going to make Trishula, or just any monster, and if your opponent can't special summon, a lot of decks just fold at that point. So I feel like Nakloth have the edge in the matchup against Cliff Force. Now, obviously, that can all change depending on what new support happens to come out for either ones of these decks in maybe the next set or some special edition or something like that. But as far as Cliff Force go in the game and Nakloth go in the game, I'm saying just them in general. I'm not talking about them facing off against each other. I feel like Nakloth just has that extra consistency, and it also has that ability not to lose to like Sinister Shadow games. Like one of the Sinister Shadow games, popping that right card at the right moment, just getting rid of the Pendulum Scale can completely make you lose, and that is one thing that you have to take into consideration with any Pendulum-based deck in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that MST can definitely disrupt you. Anti-Spell Fragrance, I just feel like there's more hate for Pendulum-based decks than there is going to be hate for the Necklace, because like their rituals and like I know there's cards that can counter rituals, but that's side decking talk. But the thing is, like even the Shaddoll's, what are you going to do against like a ritual? Because you can't use the things from your extra deck because it requires you to have a monster on your opponent's board that is from the extra deck, and that is just going to be a ritual. So we'll have to wait and see if there's any more support. But for the most part, I consider Necklace to be better because a lot of you guys have been asking me, you know, whether you should invest into the Cliffos now, only to have the Necklace just be much better later on. And the main reason is because I feel like not only is the side deck going to be favored more so for Necklace, because like again, you're not going to lose to MSTs and stuff like that, is that they're just way faster in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I mean, both of them have a card that could potentially beat each other by just, whether it be something like the Tower, just to completely kind of shut down the deck. I mean, I know both of them have like a little bit of a I would say rebuttal, because the Necklace have the decisive armor, and the Necklace, or I'm sorry, the Cliffors have the equip to like kind of keep them alive. So I mean, both of them won't completely lose to the like the main deck boss monster, or the main deck plays in the deck. But I mean, they definitely will slow both decks down to the point where, I mean, you might just win. I feel like OTK based decks. Necklace is definitely not an OTK based deck. A lot of decks right now are not really based off of OTKs. I mean, all the Pendulum decks basically are OTK oriented. But the Cliffors, I mean, they're a very strong deck. They're the only new deck I would say they would actually be able to OTK, because Burning Abyss, definitely not OTK based deck. Shaddolls, if you happen to have Dark Arm, you can maybe, like, you need like Dark Arm or like a BLS. You have like another monster to pull off an OTK in that deck. And the Centauer Knights, that's definitely not an OTK based deck. But with the Sham, you can do some shenanigans, and we'll have to see if they get more support. They just got some new support. I thought it was kind of bad. I mentioned in a previous video, they're not getting any new support because it was like so unrelevant in the game that I didn't feel like it was like, it didn't really count. It doesn't count. It's like new Blackwing support, although that new trap card that's banishing everything is not a bad card, but for the most part, most of the new Blackwing support is like, I'm not even going to play this. Are you kidding me? But anyways, let me know, guys, what deck do you think is better? Do you think the Necklace are better, or do you think that the Cliffors are just a much better deck? But I'd love to hear your reasons why. Don't just say, Necklace are better. I want to know the reasons why, because it also helps me, because sometimes I like to play in ranked, because it's just fun to see what competitive players like to do. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Azneyes signing out.